Thanks for joining me on the podcast, Justin. How's it going?
Thanks, Jared. I appreciate it. It's going great.
We're uh we're rocking the same hairdo today, huh?
Yeah, that's kind of how it happens. My kids were actually, commenting on it, how my brother has more hair than I do, and he's older than I am. So, it's
It
but
doesn't
you know
make any
what?
sense. It's mother's father. It should both
I
be both of you, right?
I know. You know what? He's gonna catch up pretty soon. So I say, just mark my words, boys.
There you go.
Yeah.
uh Really excited to have you on the podcast. As we begin here, would love for you to kind of kick things off with tell the audience about yourself and then give us a little bit about Pest Share.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm Justin Clements. I'm co-founder of Pest Share. Essentially, we have been, there's three of us ultimately, myself, Tom Clements, coincidentally my brother, and then Landon Cooley, and he is our brother from another mother. So, ultimately that's kind of how the three of us relate. But yeah, we ultimately came about with as we continued to devise, we saw this, unique pain point that was in kind of this niche within the corner of the property management industry. And ultimately, our domain experience is within traditional pest control. And that is a really just long-standing industry that has been very ripe for innovation for a long time, 100 plus years. Most of the innovation has come from, the products themselves, various product types, the treatments, the chemicals, et cetera. So, and a lot of that brought about by the EPA and whatnot. So ultimately, again, our background coming from, the traditional past, there was this underserved market that was kind of being overlooked by the industry itself. And that's kind of where we started to put our heads together and say, how do we expand this? And I think initially we entered the market a little bit, let's say naive, if you will. We didn't really understand exactly how large the pain point was, which is probably a good thing as opposed to us trying to create a pain point. The pain point just expanded the further and deeper we got into the application of what we're doing here at PestShare. And so it's been a really nice way to evolve. And the company, as it stands today, has is nothing what it was in our first several iterations. So it's been really really good to see that that the industry has taken it well. We have a really strong product market fit, and that has been what's kind of been carrying us all the way through these iteration cycles. Is the market is kind of pulling us into it, which is a really really great way to enter a market into a need. So yeah.
And what's so interesting to me is I've been going down this rabbit hole of like all things prop tech. It was like I think the average person out there thinks prop tech and they think of all these like different things, but there's all these like tech enabled and like services that are attached to the space, right? And I couldn't believe like all the cool business. And then obviously I heard about Pest Share, and I was like, this is really cool. And we had a
Mhm.
a common connection that teed us up. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you when you have you on here, and I asked this to a lot of founders that come on, is there's lots of moments that get you to start your business, but like, what's the final domino? What was the final domino for you that made you move forward with Pest Share?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say that was kind of, like I was saying a little earlier, just sort of unfolded. It was not necessarily one of those things that it was like the light bulb moment that kind of came on, like aha. Sometimes we get these aha moments, and I'd say it was probably a series of aha moments because as we continued to iterate, the product and how it would fit with the various pain points from SMB all the way to enterprise. We kind of realized that again, it was a series of these little aha moments, like, here's where it fits here, and then here's where it fits here. And so we have a number of various like value adds that essentially are in different applications within any one of our customers. And so we really have started to kind of unfold it, and I'd say it's more of like the peeling or layering of an onion, and that's kind of been really the center of how we've kind of come to be. And I'm sure there are many more applications that we have yet to obviously reveal and understand. But I think for us, as we've gone through this journey, probably one of the major or pivotal aha moments has been, that actually pest control is actually a real problem within the property management industry. And there's a really big pain point because of the friction that it creates within the resident experience and the property management's duties, to the owners. And so there's this ongoing friction that happens, and it goes through across a number of levels. But pest control being a real tangible friction point with between residents and property managers, and that ultimately is kind of where we've seen this again unfolding. But it's been just that increasing need has been something that we've really latched onto, and it's been probably one of the bigger aha moments that just seems to keep getting bigger. So
Yeah, if you look at majority of negative reviews on a place, like issues with pests seem to be very common in those negative reviews. And unfortunately, many of those cases, like the building gets a lot of the negative, faces the biggest negatives there. And it's the
right,
property manager that's not necessarily taking it serious enough, which is in fact, there's like this whole trickle down effect that happens. I remember
right,
when I first moved to Florida, my place, I didn't think it was a bad place, but there was like a hole in
yeah,
in the doorway. And I remember one night, in Florida we call them palmetto bugs, which
oh yeah,
essentially is it's a cockroach.
it's like a big cockroach. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm working late at night, it's like 2 in the morning on my computer, and I just, like, right next to my head, there
No,
was, like
jeez.
I was like, "Oh," and they're fast.
Yeah, they
It was
are.
very difficult to, yeah, catch. So, that place was like this is something I never experienced when I lived in Boston, by the way.
Yeah.
Then I moved down to Florida, and I'm on the 1st floor, which is, like, prime for insects and everything. That place was wild, Justin, because like, I remember one night I fell asleep on the couch, and I woke up to a tree frog on my leg.
No way.
I have no idea how it got in.
Wow, wow, that's
Um,
yeah, that's a
but,
new
like
one.
yeah, it's, but so, like, in certain areas of the country too, like Florida being one of them, I think you probably see this more often, but there are certain areas, right, that are more prone
Yeah,
pests. What can you tell us, like, what type of pests, like, you see the majority of places having to deal with? I mean, I think a lot of people can
yeah,
assume cockroaches and things like that, but, like, would love to
yeah.
hear.
Yeah, and the way that we've approached this too has been, what is it that, especially within kind of the niche that we serve, it's, what is it that affects the resident's experience? Because ultimately, for a property manager who's our core customer, why their intent is to keep the resident in as long as they can, and the most expensive part of their business is ultimately turnover. And so, if they have resident churn, abnormally high resident churn, then that ultimately affects their, overall NOI. And so I think that the way that we've kind of approached it is like, let's go all the way to the user's experience, and what does the user ultimately experience, and what are those detractors from that experience that come to them not renewing their leases, because again, that's one of the most expensive items on a property manager's business. And so the way that we have seen this too, and this is actually since COVID, I'd say like this has been a revelation. I'd say like, probably one of the only things good that's come from COVID has been the fact that remote work has been on the rise, and since then has been kind of a norm within the workplace. And so we see that a lot of times, like, pests travel with people essentially and unknowingly. And I think this has kind of exacerbated the pain point as well, because normally you'd see them, kind of relatively regionalized, within, let's say, the southern belts, where you see those palmetto bugs, or whatnot. And then you get the termites, and then you get the rodents who are in kind of more of the urban places, and then carpenter ants, et cetera, in some of these like more, northwestern areas. But one of the things that we've seen overall has been, with that travel, with people not having to be restricted to kind of work locations, we've seen the issues arise. And especially when it comes to the experience too, like much like yourself, having a tree frog sit on your lap when you wake up, or snuggling up next to a palmetto bug at night is not ideal, but it's also an incredibly new and creepy experience. And so not a lot of people have these, as opposed to if you are a lifer from that area, it might seem a little bit normal. But that's kind of where, as people move, as people continue to let's say matriculate to these different ideal locations that they'd like to live, to create kind of that work life balance for them, in a remote setting, the pain point of pest control has become that much more important, because not only are the pest control issues a very real issue to a resident experience, but then you've got a whole demographic of people that are new to the experience of pests themselves. And so we've kind of created our packages to be aligned with what is it that's most impactful to the resident. And those tend to be those invasive things. It's like cockroaches, bed bugs, fleas, ticks, the things that are inside your domain that you just say, like, look, you're not paying rent with me, so we're going to evict you. And that's ultimately what our goal is to increase the residents' experience by essentially kicking out all the bugs that are not paying rent with you, and they don't deserve to be in the household sharing space with you. So
Justin, I'm glad there's no video of it. Seeing me chase around that tree frog at 2 in the morning was,
I'm
and
sure that was a sight
they're
to see.
I can't believe how high they can jump.
Yeah.
It was wild. It was, yeah, it was pretty crazy.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it's anyway. Um would love to hear, have you had any like crazy stories like in building this business along the way that you've heard? I know there's probably
Oh
some
yeah.
things you can share and some you can't, but if you can share one, I think our audience would be interested in hearing what happened.
Yeah. We've hosted we've hosted a number of webinars, and one of them was with one of our channel partners, and that it was in October, Halloween version, which you can imagine all the creepy crawlies, that's definitely suitable for the Halloween vibe. And so we asked, a lot of property managers, hey, what are the worst things that you've seen, in your experience? And amongst what we've seen, it's been, we've seen some pretty intense things. And so one of the worst situations that we've ever come across has been a bed bug situation. And, a lot of times, especially because the cockroaches, like from your experience, they're fast. And as soon as you flip on the light, they scurry out, and, they're relatively sneaky. So, but bed bugs, as soon as when they start getting to, bad enough, they start getting really noticeable, and they're really difficult to get rid of. And it's generally something, especially all these bugs are generally something that is best suited for professionally trained, pest control technicians. And then also you've got the various products that are professional grade. So again, a lot of times what we see is that residents have sat, this kind of speaks to that pain point. Residents have sat on these issues because they know that they're expensive to deal with. And then they try to do kind of these home remedies that just end up exacerbating the issues. And so, we had a really early case which actually kind of spoke to the pain point. This was a really early stage side of it, is that it was a small multifamily building, that more of a boutique multifamily building. And, the issue wasn't addressed. The resident didn't express the issue. And so as it exacerbated, it spread throughout the rest of the complex or rest of the building. And there were bed bugs that were infesting all of these adjacent units. And it just continued to spread and spread and spread. And so ultimately, there was a point to where we had to have like a bed bug sniffing, canine come through the area, and just identify all of these units that had issues with bed bugs, especially like beginning stages, because they're difficult to detect. And so this was again an extreme case, but when it gets bad, you can see bed bugs. I remember seeing bed bugs crawling up and down the door jams, and you could see where somebody closed the door, and then you can see just these blood spatters within the door hinges where you see all these bed bugs that were just caught in the wrong moment at the wrong time. And so it was a really intense issue, but ultimately, I mean, it kind of really speaks to why we exist today. Because if that first resident had let their property manager know of the issue, we could have stopped it from being a $2,000 issue to being a 40,000, ended up being like more of a $40,000 expense to that whole building, because it was a such a bad case that didn't get reported because again, residents primarily being responsible for pest control in most states don't necessarily have the cash on hand to be able to pay for these issues. And ultimately it starts to this is why that friction exists. So that really has spoken to, why Pest Share is there. And because we want to head off the issue, we want that residents to know that if they are the first ones, it's, these coverages exist, because if these invasive species kind of encroach in their living space, then it's already built into their lease. They're paying for it monthly, and ultimately all they have to do is get on their phone and submit a request, and we're out there within less than 4 days. And that's been a huge alleviation to the industry as a whole as we've continued to grow. So extreme cases, but again, we hope to prevent those in the future.
That was awesome. I'm glad you shared that. Last question
Sometimes
for
we can
you.
just like feel the creepy crawlies coming up, when
I
those
mean,
stories come in. Yeah.
I'm still waiting. I don't know why that someone hasn't created a horror movie of just a
Yeah.
cockroach in a house with one person over the course of several days. Like that. That to me is scary.
Yes.
Um, Last question for you, Justin, before we wrap up here.
You
What's
bet.
next for Pest Share that really excites you?
So, we're coming off a really strong 24, and 2025 is, I mean, we've said this from the beginning. Every year has been getting better and better, and we've just been catching more and more steam. So 2025, if I sound like a broken record to many, it's going to be our best year yet. And as we continue to drive this forward, expose the issue ultimately with throughout the industry. We've been building, our software, our platform, for residents access. And so, what we've been working towards overall has really been, not to capture the overall maintenance space. Like, we want to just simply own what we're good at and do it through and through. And there's not a lot of solutions out there that capture the end-to-end experience. A lot of them will stop at the creation of a work order, but the end delivery of that is what's missing in many cases. And so by owning that, we believe that if we can stay kind of picks and shovels, if you will, within the operation of any given property management space, we are really focused on integrating with all of the various platforms, and that is going to be a major win for the industry, major win for us, major win for residents, because we're coming to the residents where they already interact with their property managers. And so by doing so, we're giving them easy, quick, cheap access, 70% less, expensive than what they would normally do if they were to seek out professional pest control themselves. And so with this, the economics only get better the more that we have on our platform, and the more that we provide access, to these residents. So our goal is to get into every resident's hand, and you know by being on those platforms that they use and interact with on a daily, weekly, monthly basis within their property management ecosystem, the better that our we're going to see, I think, the best results out of, not only the residents experience, but also kind of mitigating these issues and starting to melt away at least a small portion of that resident landlord friction there. So
I love it. Justin, thanks so much for joining us here on the podcast today. I look forward to staying in touch
my
with you,
pleasure.
and we'll definitely be talking more.
Awesome. Thanks, Jared. Have a good one.